Ever wonder why millionaires seem to live in a completely different financial reality? I am talking about that mysterious moment when money stops being something you chase. It becomes something that starts working for you instead. There is a specific threshold where this transformation happens. It is not what most people think it is. Welcome to Siraz Patwari. I have spent years studying wealth building patterns. I have watched people cross major financial milestones. I have analyzed exactly what changes when a portfolio hits certain numbers. What I discovered might change how you think about building wealth forever. There is something fundamentally different that happens at a certain point. It happens when you reach $1 million invested. Notice I did not say $1 million earned. I did not say a $1 million net worth. I mean $1 million actually invested and working for you. If you want to master the game of money, you are in the right place. Please make sure to subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into financial freedom. Now, let's talk about why that first million changes everything. Most people think wealth building is linear. They imagine that having 200,000 is just twice as good as 100,000. They think a million is simply 10 times better than 100,000. But that is not how money actually works at scale. There are specific thresholds where the rules of the game change completely. $1 million represents the most important threshold you will ever cross. Here is what is really happening that nobody talks about. When you hit $1 million invested, you don't just have more money. You literally become a different type of person in the economic system. You transform from someone who trades time for money into someone who owns capital. This capital generates income for you. This is not just a philosophical difference. It is a mathematical reality. It changes how you live. It changes how you work. It changes how you think about risk. Let me show you exactly what I mean with some numbers. These numbers will probably shock you. Imagine you have $10,000 invested. You earn a 7% annual return. That generates about $700 per year in passive income. That is nice, but it is not life-changing. Now, imagine you have $50,000 invested. You are looking at around $3,500 annually. Again, it is helpful, but you are still completely dependent on your job for survival. But here is where the math becomes absolutely unfair in your favor. $1 million at that same 7% return generates $70,000 per year. You get this without lifting a finger. $70,000 is more than many people earn at their full-time jobs. It requires 0 hours of your time. It requires 0 commute. There is no dealing with difficult bosses. There is no workplace drama. Think about what this means in practical terms. The average American household spends about $67,000 per year. This is according to recent data. So with $1 million invested, your money is not just contributing to your lifestyle, it is potentially funding your entire lifestyle. Your investments become your employee. They work 24 hours a day. They work 7 days a week. They generate income while you sleep. They work while you travel. They work while you spend time with family. They work while you pursue your passions. This is the first wealth threshold where capital starts outperforming labor. Once you cross this line, everything shifts. You stop being a saver. You become a capital owner. These might sound like similar concepts, but they are completely different psychological realities. When you are a saver, you think about accumulating money. Every dollar matters because you are building towards something. You are focused on growth. You want to add more to the pile. Your strategy is all about offense. You look for ways to earn more. You look for ways to save more. But when you become a capital owner with significant assets, your mindset shifts. You move toward preservation and optimization. You are no longer trying to get rich. You are trying to stay rich. This requires a completely different set of skills. It requires new strategies. It requires new psychological frameworks. The math alone changes your perspective on risk. Imagine you have $20,000 invested. A 10% market drop costs you $2,000. That stings, but it is recoverable. Now imagine you have $1 million invested. That same 10% drop costs you $100,000. Suddenly, market volatility is not just numbers on a screen. It is real money. It could fund multiple years of living expenses. But here is the fascinating part. Most people do not understand this until they experience it. Once you have significant capital, market downturns stop feeling like disasters. They start feeling like opportunities. When you have $1 million generating income, you have a cushion. You can weather temporary storms. More importantly, you have the capital to take advantage of situations. This is where the wealthy really separate themselves. They use market downturns to buy more assets at a discount. They have the resources to invest in opportunities that require big capital. They can afford to take calculated risks. These risks could multiply their wealth. They already have enough to maintain their lifestyle. Your relationship with work changes completely at this stage. I am not talking about immediately quitting your job. Some people choose to do that, but most stay. However, they work from a position of strength. They do not work from a position of desperation. When your investments cover your expenses, work becomes a choice. Every career decision is a choice rather than a necessity. You can afford to walk away from a toxic environment. You can negotiate harder for better pay. You are not desperate for the next paycheck. You can take risks like starting a business. You can switch careers easily. You have a financial foundation that won't disappear. This psychological shift affects every aspect of your professional life. Maybe there is a job that pays less but offers better growth. Maybe it aligns more with your values. When you have capital, you can afford to take that job. Maybe you always wanted to start a company. You were afraid of losing steady income. $1 million does not eliminate risk, but it provides a safety net. It makes bold moves more feasible. The interesting thing is that this confidence leads to better outcomes. People who are not desperate make better decisions. They negotiate from a position of power. They take on projects that align with their skills. They don't just take whatever pays the bills. But the most significant change is how you think about time. When you are building toward your first million, time is a tool. Every hour not spent earning feels wasteful. You calculate the opportunity cost of leisure. But once your capital generates income, things change. You realize your time is more valuable than your immediate earning potential. This is when people make different choices. They might work fewer hours. They might choose work that is more fulfilling. They might take longer vacations. They don't worry about lost income. They spend more time with family. They pursue hobbies that provide satisfaction but no revenue. The $1 million threshold also unlocks new investments. When you have substantial capital, new doors open. Minimum investment requirements become accessible. You can look at private equity funds. You can look at real estate syndications. You can look at business acquisitions. These are high-barrier investments. These are not just for the ultra-wealthy. They become options once you have $1 million foundation. These opportunities can accelerate your wealth building. Many private funds require $50,000 to start. Some require $100,000 per position. When you only have $20,000 total, these are out of reach. But with $1 million portfolio, you can allocate 5%. You can access higher yield opportunities. You don't have to put all your eggs in one basket. Leverage opportunities also become different. Banks treat you differently when you have assets. Getting approved for loans becomes easier. You can show liquid investments as collateral. Business acquisition loans become viable options. They require substantial down payments. They require proven capital reserves. You have those now. But here is where things get really interesting. Something catches new millionaires off guard. The psychological pressure actually increases. When you had $50,000, a 5% drop was $2,500. It was painful, but not devastating. At $1 million, that same drop is $50,000. Think about that for a moment. You could lose more in a week than some people make in a year. Your daily portfolio swings exceed monthly salaries. This creates a new type of financial anxiety. You cannot understand it until you feel it. I have watched people hit their first million. Then they become obsessed with their balance. They refresh their apps compulsively. They watch their net worth swing by tens of thousands. This is based on market movements they cannot control. It is like your future is tied to a roller coaster. This is why many people shift their strategy. They become more conservative. They prioritize keeping the money. The risk tolerance that got you to $1 million is not the same. It is not what helps you keep the $1 million. You think about asset allocation differently. Maybe you were okay with 80% in growth stocks, but having $800,000 in volatile assets is different. It might keep you awake at night. This shift toward preservation is mathematically rational. At $1 million, you are not trying to hit a home run. You are trying to avoid striking out. A 20% loss on 50,000 is 10,000. A 20% loss on 1,000,000 is 200,000. That represents years of progress. But here is what is fascinating about human psychology. Despite the new anxieties, people feel more secure. It is not because the money fixes everything. It is because it provides a substantial foundation. It feels strong enough to weather most storms. When you know your investments can fund your life, risk changes. Job security becomes less critical. You have years of expenses and passive income. Health insurance gaps are less terrifying. You have assets to cover unexpected costs. Economic recessions are less threatening. You own assets that historically recover. This security creates an optionality mindset. Every life decision becomes a choice between options. It is no longer a desperate attempt to avoid ruin. Do you want to live in an expensive city? Do you want to move somewhere cheaper to stretch your money? Both are legitimate choices now. Your baseline needs are covered. Do you want to start a business that might fail? Do you want a steady job that might be boring? You can afford to bet on yourself. The worst-case scenario is not poverty. It is returning to your previous lifestyle. Your investments continue to grow regardless. This optionality extends to family too. Having children becomes less stressful financially. Supporting aging parents becomes feasible. You are not living paycheck to paycheck. Taking time off for life events is possible. It does not threaten your long-term security. The $1,000,000 threshold also unlocks the compound acceleration effect. This is where the math becomes almost absurd. If your $1,000,000 grows by 8%, you made 80,000. You did that without effort. That is more than many people save in a decade. This acceleration means the second million comes faster. The first million might take 20 years. The second million might only take 5 or 6. The combination of contributions and growth on a large base is powerful. It cuts the timeline dramatically. Here is what separates millionaire investors. They think about tax optimization as a core strategy. It is not an afterthought. When your gains are substantial, taxes matter. The difference between 15% and 25% is huge. Tax loss harvesting becomes worth the effort. Asset location strategies become important. Retirement account optimization is now a priority. The dollar amounts make the complexity worth it. The wealthy have access to better infrastructure. They have private banking relationships. They have dedicated financial advisors. They have sophisticated tax planning. These services are designed for complex situations. They benefit people with substantial assets. The most profound change is how you think about legacy. When you are building your first 100,000, you focus on you. You focus on your own security. But at $1,000,000, the money grows faster than you spend. You start thinking about what happens next. You think about wealth beyond your own lifetime. This is not just about leaving money to kids. It is about creating something that outlives you. It is about generating value for generations. Your investments become about stewarding capital. You want to impact multiple lives over time. This shift affects your daily habits. When you accumulate the first 100,000, every dollar is precious. Progress is slow and visible. You celebrate milestones because they represent discipline. But at $1,000,000, you think in different units. You stop counting individual dollars. You start thinking in months of independence. A $10,000 expense is not devastating. You know your investments replace it quickly. It might take less than 2 months to grow back. This creates financial breathing room. Short-term setbacks don't trigger the same fear. But there is a counterintuitive part to this. The more money you have, the more opportunities you find. You can make more money with less effort. The financial system has secret levels. These levels unlock at certain thresholds. Most people have no idea they exist. Take leverage as an example. If you have $20,000, banks see risk. If you have $1,000,000 in liquid assets, they see a partner. You become a preferred customer. You qualify for better loan terms. You can get business lines of credit. You have access to margin lending. This lets you borrow against your portfolio. You can take opportunities without selling your stocks. Access to cheap capital is a huge advantage. This is how the wealthy separate themselves. They don't just save their way to the top. They use existing capital to buy more assets. It is like having a key to secret doors. Real estate becomes a different game too. You don't have to scrape for a down payment. You don't just hope you qualify for a mortgage. You can move quickly on good deals. cash offers become possible. Bridge financing becomes an option. You have $1 million foundation to back you up. The most significant change is how you think about opportunity cost. When you are building, every hour counts. You calculate if a vacation is worth the lost income. Once the capital works, your time is the priority. Your earning capacity is no longer the bottleneck. This leads to choices that look irrational to others. People turn down high-paying jobs. They walk away from prestige if the environment is bad. They take long breaks to be with family. They pursue passion projects that pay nothing. From the outside, this looks irresponsible. Why would a millionaire turn down more money? That is exactly the point. When your needs are met by passive income, you optimize for something else. You optimize for life satisfaction. Your relationship with risk becomes inverted. When you have limited capital, every choice is crucial. There is no safety net. One bad choice sets you back years. But with substantial assets, the downside is manageable. This risk tolerance paradox is fascinating. People who can afford to lose are often conservative with their core, but they are aggressive with a small portion. They keep 80% in safe, diversified funds. They use the other 20% for high-reward bets. This affects your social relationships too. Money conversations become more complicated. You can't really complain about a bad market day. Your daily loss might be more than your friend's yearly salary. You can't discuss the stress of a downturn. Your lifestyle is not actually threatened. You can't talk about the burden of managing wealth. To most people, those are luxury problems. This creates a form of social isolation. Your concerns become irrelevant to the average conversation. Your actual worries sound like bragging to some. The $1 million rule is not just about a number. It is about crossing into a new reality. The rules of money change forever. You transform from a laborer into a capital owner. Your money works harder than most people do. The shift from accumulator to owner changes your life. It changes how you think and how you work. If you want to build wealth, you need this roadmap. You need to know what is possible once you get there. Focus on that first million. It is the hardest one to get. But once you cross that line, the game is different. It becomes a game of preservation and growth. It becomes a game of freedom and choice. Thank you for watching this deep dive. I hope this helps you on your journey to financial independence. Remember to stay disciplined and keep investing. I am Siraz Patwari, and I will see you in the next video. Be sure to like and subscribe if you found this valuable. Your future self will thank you for the work you do today. Goodbye for now.